The lights dimmed, the crowd's roar rising to a fever pitch. In one corner of the ring stood a man who had once struck fear into the hearts of every opponent he faced, Mike Tyson. Known for his lightning-fast punches, brutal strength, and unrelenting dominance in the boxing world, Tyson had built a legacy that was as infamous as it was legendary. His fists were not just weapons, they were the stuff of nightmares. But in the other corner, another figure loomed large, ready to face the feared heavyweight. Rob Van Dam, a name synonymous with extreme wrestling, a man whose agility, unpredictability, and sheer resilience had made him a fan favorite in the world of professional wrestling. The idea of these two worlds colliding was, at first glance, almost unbelievable. The raw power and brute force of Tyson against the high-flying, acrobatic wrestling style of Van Dam seemed like an impossible matchup. Tyson was a master of quick, devastating knockout blows, while Van Dam's expertise lay in flips, jumps, and using his surroundings to his advantage. What could happen when a boxer with the most feared punch in history steps into the ring with a professional wrestler whose entire career was built on defying expectations? As the countdown to the showdown began, the excitement was palpable. Fans around the world debated who would come out on top in this battle of contrasting styles. Would Tyson's unrelenting aggression overwhelm Van Dam's agility, or would Van Dam's ability to adapt and think on his feet prove to be the key to his victory? Both men had been champions in their respective arenas, each having faced their own demons and come out on top. But now they were about to test their mettle in an entirely different world, one that combined skill sets neither of them had ever faced before. In the history of combat sports, few moments have been as intriguing as this. Tyson, at the height of his power, had been nearly unstoppable. But that was years ago, and now Tyson was older, perhaps a little slower, but still capable of violence that made the hardest men in the world think twice. Van Dam, on the other hand, had thrived in an environment where unpredictability was key, where a single wrong move could result in disaster. But in the world of boxing, where every punch carried the weight of history, could his finesse and calculated risks be enough to survive? With each second that passed, the anticipation only grew. Fans couldn't decide whether they were more excited about seeing two icons clash or witnessing something that had never been done before. Tyson had a reputation for finishing fights quickly, but Van Dam had a history of defying expectations. Could he survive long enough to push Tyson beyond his limits? Or would the legendary fighter land the knockout blow early on? As the bell rang, the tension was unbearable. Tyson, as feared as ever, looked focused, his eyes locked on Van Dam, who had a smirk on his face, a sign that he wasn't going down without a fight. The crowd roared as they awaited the first move. Tyson's style was simple: get close, unleash a devastating blow, and end it. Van Dam, though, was unpredictable. He darted in and out, bouncing off the ropes, using his speed to keep Tyson guessing. It was clear that Tyson was prepared for a fight, but there was something about Van Dam's unorthodox style that made him a dangerous opponent. Each movement, each jab was scrutinized, as fans everywhere wondered how this unprecedented battle would unfold. Tyson's power was unmatched, but Rob Van Dam's unorthodox style kept him on his toes, constantly adjusting, looking for an opening that could change the course of the fight. Tyson's expression grew more intense with every move Van Dam made. He wasn't used to opponents who refused to be predictable. In the first few minutes, it was a game of cat and mouse. Tyson moved forward, throwing bombs, but Van Dam was agile, bouncing around the ring, taking every opportunity to land his own attacks. Each time Tyson's fists flew through the air, Van Damme was already out of range. It was clear this wouldn't be an easy fight for Tyson, and the audience began to murmur in disbelief. Could the boxer, who had once knocked out entire generations of opponents in mere seconds, be outsmarted by a wrestler known for his unpredictability? The real question began to surface. Who would break first? Would Tyson's raw power catch up with Van Damme? Or would Van Damme's agility and mind games prove to be Tyson's downfall? As the fight wore on, Tyson began to grow more impatient, a look of frustration creeping into his gaze. Van Damme's acrobatics were confusing him, and Tyson knew he couldn't afford to waste time. The question on everyone's mind was this: could Tyson stay calm long enough to land the knockout punch? Or would Van Damme's unconventional style find a way to break the beast? As the fight reached a new level of intensity, the tension was so thick it felt like the air itself was ready to explode. Tyson's fists flew faster, harder, but Van Damme's agility allowed him to stay one step ahead. Each second felt like it could be the turning point, the moment when the fight could either end in a flash of fury or with the crowd on its feet, roaring in amazement. Just as the fight was reaching its peak, a moment of silence fell over the arena. The unexpected happened: a misstep from Van Damme. Tyson saw it. A split second, an opening too good to pass up. He moved in, his fist cocked back, the entire crowd holding its breath. The atmosphere was electric. One man was about to face his destiny, and the other his ultimate challenge. Would Tyson's infamous knockout power win the day, or had Van Damme's unpredictability led him to his own victory? Just as Tyson's fist hurtled toward Van Damme, the unthinkable happened. In a move that seemed almost supernatural, Van Damme managed to dodge the punch by a hair's breadth, twisting his body in midair with an agility that seemed impossible for a man of his size. The crowd gasped in unison as the very fabric of what they thought was a certain victory for Tyson began to unravel. Tyson, momentarily off balance from the missed blow, stumbled forward just enough for Van Damme to capitalize on the opening. With a speed that left the audience in shock, Van Damme launched himself at Tyson, delivering a swift kick to the side of Tyson's knee. The force wasn't enough to take Tyson down, but it was enough to shake him, sending a jolt of frustration and confusion through his entire body. This was not the fight he had prepared for. Tyson, the man who had flattened opponents with a single punch, was now struggling to land a solid blow against a man who didn't seem to play by any rules. Van Damme's unorthodox wrestling style had thrown Tyson off his game, and the boxer's frustration began to show. His signature aggression was starting to fade, replaced by a rare vulnerability. Tyson had fought legends, champions, and monsters of the ring, but never had he faced someone like this, someone who refused to stay in his line of sight. Every time Tyson thought he had Van Damme cornered, the wrestler was already gone, twisting around the ropes or rolling across the canvas in ways that defied logic. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a battle of wits and resilience, a contest between raw power and calculated chaos. The tension in the arena reached a boiling point. Fans who had expected Tyson to steamroll through his opponent were beginning to wonder if they had underestimated the wrestler. Van Damme wasn't just surviving, he was thriving in this moment, playing his cards exactly as he had planned. It wasn't just Tyson he was outsmarting, it was the entire notion of what this fight was supposed to be. The fighters in the ring weren't just competitors, they were breaking the mold of their respective sports, creating a spectacle no one could predict. But just as Van Damme was finding his rhythm, an unexpected twist shook the arena. The referee, who had been watching the back and forth with a growing sense of disbelief, suddenly stopped the fight. He looked around, as if unsure of what to do next, and the crowd's confused murmurs turned into frantic whispers. Was there a disqualification? A foul? A hidden rule that neither fighter had anticipated? The tension was unbearable. Van Damme's eyes widened, and Tyson's fists clenched in disbelief. This was not supposed to happen. They had both come this far, both sacrificed everything to be here, only to have the fight come to a halt. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, eyes darting between the fighters and the referee. The camera zoomed in, capturing every detail of the scene. Had Van Damme done something illegal? Or was there something else at play here? For a moment, everything stopped. The noise, the movement, the very heartbeat of the arena. The fight was suspended, but no one knew for how long, and the sense of uncertainty hung in the air like a heavy fog. Van Damme stood there, his chest heaving, trying to process what was happening. He had outmaneuvered Tyson, but now it seemed like the rug was being pulled out from under him. Tyson, on the other hand, was pacing, fists still clenched, clearly frustrated by the sudden interruption. He had been on the verge of landing a decisive blow when everything was halted. Was this the universe's way of telling him that victory wasn't going to come as easily as it always had before? Then, just as quickly as the confusion had started, the announcement came over the loudspeakers, adding a new layer of chaos to the unfolding drama. It wasn't a foul, and it wasn't a technicality. Instead, it was something far more shocking. The fight, it seemed, was being interrupted because of a new stipulation. An outside force had just entered the picture. In a jaw-dropping moment that no one could have seen coming, the door to the arena swung open, and another figure appeared in the shadows. The crowd went wild, their shock quickly turning into excitement as they began to recognize who it was. An even bigger legend in combat sports, someone whose reputation eclipsed both Tyson and Van Damme. This new player wasn't here to watch. They were here to be part of the action. The mere presence of this person changed everything. The world had just been turned upside down. The fighters in the ring, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, now had to contend with a third presence, one that was larger, more dominant, and far more experienced in the kind of chaos that Tyson and Van Damme had been creating. It wasn't just about Tyson and Van Damme anymore. This was about survival. It was about strategy. And it was about how far each of them was willing to go in a fight where the stakes had just been raised to unimaginable heights. Now, as the clock ticked down and the new player took their place, Tyson and Van Damme both knew that they couldn't trust anyone, not even themselves. Everything they thought they knew about this fight, about the strategies they had been preparing, had just been thrown out the window. Would they be able to rise to the occasion, or had they just found themselves in over their heads? The unknown figure in the shadows wasn't just an obstacle. It was the game changer that could turn everything upside down. And just like that, the fight, which had already been tense and unpredictable, had become something entirely different. What would happen next? Would Tyson and Van Damme join forces against this new threat? Or would they continue their rivalry with even higher stakes than before? Only time would tell, and the answers were nowhere near as simple as anyone had hoped. The true test was just beginning, and the only thing certain was that the battle was far from over. The crowd's energy shifted as the mysterious figure stepped forward, their identity now fully revealed. It was none other than one of the most decorated fighters in history, someone whose legacy in combat sports was unmatched, someone who had faced Tyson and Van Damme in the past, and who had always managed to come out on top. The air in the arena crackled with anticipation as whispers of "no way" echoed through the stands. The figure's presence wasn't just a disruption, it was an assertion of dominance, a signal that everything was about to change. Tyson and Van Damme, momentarily distracted by the unexpected arrival, exchanged wary glances. Neither of them had prepared for this. They had been so focused on each other, on overcoming their contrasting styles, that the possibility of a third competitor had never crossed their minds. Now, however, they were forced to confront an entirely new challenge. The arena seemed smaller, as if the walls were closing in on them. Tyson, the explosive powerhouse, had always thrived on unpredictability, but now the odds were stacked against him. Van Damme, the unpredictable acrobat, realized that his agility and quick thinking could only get him so far when faced with someone like this new opponent. Without hesitation, the figure launched into action, a flurry of precision and power that left both Tyson and Van Damme reeling. Their initial plans of domination crumbled as they were forced to adapt to the new reality. The fight was no longer about who could overpower the other. It was about survival. Tyson, shaken by the sudden turn of events, squared off against the new challenger, his fists flying with unbridled fury. Van Damme, not one to shy away from a challenge, quickly found his footing, using his speed and agility to dodge the incoming strikes. But this new player was no ordinary fighter. Each move they made seemed to anticipate the next, almost as if they had been watching Tyson and Van Damme from the very beginning. Tyson, furious and desperate to regain control, was the first to make a move, charging at the newcomer with a flurry of punches. But every strike was met with a counter each time Tyson thought he had the upper hand. The figure effortlessly deflected his blows, using their superior technique and experience to keep Tyson off balance. Van Damme, watching the exchange with a mix of awe and frustration, saw an opening. In one split-second moment of clarity, he launched himself off the ropes, attempting a high-flying maneuver designed to take out the newcomer. But the figure anticipated it, sidestepping at the last second and sending Van Damme crashing to the mat with a powerful elbow strike. The audience was stunned into silence. What was happening? Had Tyson and Van Damme bitten off more than they could chew? Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, something extraordinary occurred. Tyson, his rage now reaching its peak, made a decision that would change the course of the fight. Instead of charging him blindly again, he paused, taking a breath perhaps, for the first time in the entire fight, and assessed the situation. He realized that he couldn't win this battle with force alone. There was only one way to deal with someone who was as elusive and skilled as their opponent. In a move that no one could have predicted, Tyson changed his strategy completely. Instead of relying solely on his fists, he used his raw power to force a stalemate, locking the newcomer in a clinch that allowed Van Damme to regain his footing. The two fighters, now facing their common enemy, exchanged a brief, silent look. They didn't need words. They understood that in order to defeat this new threat, they had to put aside their differences and work together. The crowd's energy shifted again, this time to something electric hope. For the first time in the entire fight, Tyson and Van Damme were on the same page. They had never fought alongside each other, but now they shared one goal: to take down the common adversary before them. With a newfound unity, they attacked together. Tyson, using his sheer strength to pin their opponent down, while Van Damme, with his acrobatics, delivered a series of rapid-fire strikes. The figure tried to counter, but the combined force of Tyson and Van Damme was overwhelming. In a final, desperate attempt to break free, the opponent tried to swing a vicious kick toward Van Damme, but Tyson, thinking on his feet, intercepted the blow, pulling the figure into a devastating uppercut that sent shockwaves through the arena. The opponent staggered, clearly winded but still standing. It wasn't over yet. With one last surge of energy, the two combatants launched themselves at their adversary, Tyson's fists and Van Damme's agility working in perfect harmony. Finally, after a brutal exchange, the opponent crumpled to the canvas, unable to continue. The arena erupted. It was over. Tyson and Van Damme had done the unthinkable. They had conquered the impossible. Their rivalry had given way to an unexpected alliance, and they had managed to defeat a fighter who had seemingly been unbeatable. The fight, which had begun as a test of their individual prowess, had transformed into a battle for survival, and together they had emerged victorious. As the dust settled, Tyson and Van Damme stood side by side, exhausted but triumphant. The crowd's roar echoed around the arena, but their eyes were locked on the defeated figure, who lay motionless on the mat. What had seemed like an unwinnable situation had been turned around by the most unlikely of partnerships. Tyson, the unrelenting powerhouse, and Van Damme, the unpredictable acrobat, had defied the odds, and in doing so, they had written a new chapter in the annals of combat sports history. But as the lights dimmed and the crowd began to disperse, there was a quiet realization that lingered in the air. This fight wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about what happens when two warriors who had once been enemies set aside their differences to face something greater than themselves. In the end, it was unity, not power or agility alone, that had led to their victory. And that, perhaps, was the most unexpected twist of all.